Good morning, and thank you for inviting us back to talk to the L Brands board meeting about your subsidiary company, Victoria's Secret. We are here to discuss the ethical principles that your business can incorporate into your practices and what you're mainly struggling with. I'm Lauren, and I will start with a brief overview of the textile industry and how Victoria's Secret falls into that. Then I will pass it over to Olivia, who will talk to you a little bit more about the ethical frameworks that we believe Victoria's Secret can incorporate. And finally, Nicole will go into more details about the recommendations that we propose that would best suit Victoria's Secret. Looking at the fashion industry at large, it's very clear that it pollutes as much as some of the largest industries on the globe. For instance, the fashion industry pollutes just as much as the livestock industry as one of the top 5 polluters on the planet. This is not expected to decrease anytime soon. In fact, in the next 11 years, it's only expected to increase by 44%. Unfortunately, Victoria's Secret has played a large role in this, but that doesn't mean that you can't stop and actually improve your practices. In fact, we can see that in the past, Victoria's Secret has specifically struggled with implementing toxic chemicals into your garment production, which has been very problematic in terms of health concerns and environmental concerns. These toxic chemicals, which you have now addressed and are planning to outlaw by 2020, have also caused very many health concerns in terms of cancer and reproduction abnormalities. And as a result, we've seen that many people are suffering from wearing your garments, but not only individuals are suffering, but the environment is suffering as well. Many of the toxic chemicals have caused runoff into water in the areas surrounding your factories, and as a result, you have very problematic standards in terms of environmental and social impacts. However, this doesn't mean that you can't stop now and actually improve your practices. One other industry or one other sector that you struggle to actually improve in is your target audience. As a lingerie company, you're targeting women and trying to sell to those women. However, your campaigns in the past have struggled to actually fit what those women are looking for. Your Perfect Body campaign has actually struggled to reach the women that you want to by promoting an unhealthy body image that the women that you're trying to sell to don't love. Not only are you failing to reach the women that you want to sell to, but you're hurting the women working in your factories. Out of the 75 million people who work in the textile industry, 80% of those are women. Many of the women producing your garments face terrible working conditions and have had complaints of sexual harassment and discrimination. All of these factors have contributed to a wide history from your company of forced labor, child labor, and other poor working conditions. But this doesn't mean you can't change. Because you've had such terrible conditions for your employees in the past, we've seen calls for action from the fashion industry at large and your consumers. You have the ability and the resources to make this stop, and we highly encourage you do so. The fashion industry at large has made it very well known that your company is struggling. In fact, according to the Fashion and Transparency Index, your company was given a 19% out of 100. This index looked at a variety of factors such as transparency, governance, and policy, and you actually ranked the lowest in traceability with 3%. In addition, 0%. You also ranked very low in working conditions for women at 3%. Because your competitors and everyone in the fashion industry at large knows about the practices that you're implementing, your competitors are going to step up their game and consumers are going to switch. Because you have the ability and the resources to actually make all of these stop, you will be able to actually boost your profits if you start implementing more ethical practices, which Olivia will now discuss.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes, so to look at the ethical considerations that go into more sustainable production for Victoria's Secret, as well as reporting standards, we're going to look at the beneficence framework, which is the moral obligation to act in the best interest of others. And within that, there are 3 key principles, which are to protect and defend the rights of others, to do no harm to others and to remove the conditions that caused that harm initially. And so this may seem strange. Victoria's Secret's not a charity, you're a for-profit business, but for Victoria's Secret to act in the best interest of others is to act in the best interest of its employees, of its customers, and even of its shareholders. And Victoria's Secret has already bought into this value. They added a new value to their statement a few years ago that says it matters how we play the game. So with that in mind, we're going to look at 3 ethical considerations. The first one is that Victoria's Secret does not report its internal audits. And this is a problem because Victoria's Secret has spent time developing a cohesive supplier code of conduct, and they conduct internal audits for 95% of their companies, and yet Victoria's Secret doesn't release any of these findings. And so consumers don't know what is happening and what action is being taken to address their findings. And Victoria's Secret does not release the names of its Tier 2 or Tier 3 suppliers. And so it's impossible for people to go out on their own and do the research and see what is connected to those specific suppliers. And this is important because human rights are at stake. The security of the environment is at stake. And as we saw back in 2011, there were several reports from Bloomberg and other companies confirming child labor in the cotton picking fields in Burkina Faso. And Victoria's Secret did conduct their own internal investigation, but they did not release the report from that investigation, and they simply negated the claims. And so this leaves consumers in the place where they have to decide who they trust. Do they trust Victoria's Secret or do they trust outside agencies? And our recommendation is that it should be clear who consumers can trust. They should want to trust Victoria's Secret. And so that's why we're recommending that Victoria's Secret have set CSR reporting standards and to release an annual report so that consumers can follow along on their progress. And our second ethical consideration is that Victoria's Secret does not release the corrective action that is taken to address the findings of their internal audits. So as I mentioned, they do audit 95% of their factories, and yet they don't say what is being done to address the issues. And this is important because if human rights are being violated, then we want to know that Victoria's Secret is removing those conditions that do cause the harm. And we want to know that they're doing it in a long-term way. They're not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem for it to come up again a few years later, which is why our recommendation is that Victoria's Secret do CSR reports and they address any immediate specific findings based on the factory, but then they also have long-term initiatives that are promoting women empowerment and working conditions within their factories and within their supply chain, but also to protect the sake of the environment. And by doing this, they'll be a more sustainable company overall. And the third ethical consideration that we're going to look at is that as a board member, you have the fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of shareholders. And as we have seen, Victoria's Secret's profits have been falling steadily since 2015. And in the last 3 years alone, stock price dropped 70%. And the long-term success of Victoria's Secret isn't just important to shareholders, it's also important to employees. So you have the obligation to do something that will reconnect Victoria's Secret with its customer base so that it can regain profits to benefit shareholders, customers, and employees. And now my colleague Nicole is going to tell you more about how these ethical considerations can actually be used to benefit Victoria's Secret image.
Thanks so much, Olivia. So I'd love to speak with all of you today about the implementation of these ethical strategies that Victoria's Secret can tackle and actually express to our consumers. So first, I'll be speaking about the ethical sourcing that we can implement. Second, I'll be speaking about women empowerment. And third, I'll be speaking about sustainable products. So ethical sourcing is very integral to the issue that we're trying to tackle. And if you guys can all imagine going to a website, if you're shopping for clothing, and clicking on a product, and then you can see a very clear and transparent breakdown of the pricing, where that came from, who made it, what factory it was made within. And that can really change the game. It's very important because if you think about the statistics, you can see that 27% of all apparel shopping is done online. If consumers are able to follow along with our CSR reporting in a very fluid and transparent way within our website, they'll be able to stay up to date and actually compete with our competitors that are doing this right now, like Aerie and Target. Moving on to women empowerment, Victoria's Secret should partner with the HER Project. The HER Project is a large organization that provides different funding to women across the globe in order to increase their labor equality, to increase working conditions, and to increase their acceptance across the globe from different points around the sustainable supply chain line. And to continue, I'd like to finally touch upon our sustainable products. We would like to introduce a line of underwear that is made from cotton, organic cotton, and farmed in these locations. When people hear this, they sometimes ask the question, isn't organic cotton more expensive than non-organic cotton? And we'd like to say that we've spoken with many different textile factories within the US, like Nature USA, and we've actually done a cost breakdown. Non-organic cotton is produced at the same price as organic cotton, and it also has a very positive effect on the environment. So we'd like to increase our production of organic cotton lines. By 2020, we'd like to have 20% of our line be made by organic cotton. So with these implementations in place, we see a great future for Victoria's Secret to improve their ethical standing across the board and regain that target market that they've been missing out on currently. So we'd like to thank you all very much for being here with us today, and we see a very bright future ahead for Victoria's Secret.